Hello, everybody, and welcome to Basketball Ireland's Inclusion Spotlight. My name is Paul Carr, and I'm very happy to be joined by Paralympic athlete, high jumper, and former Irish international basketball player Jordan Lee. How are you, Jordan?
Hi, Paul. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Jordan, for people who maybe aren't familiar with you and your career so far, do you want to just give us a bit of background about yourself?
Definitely. I suppose I'll formally introduce myself. My name is Jordan Lee. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Killarney, County Kerry, which is by far the nicest county in the country, which Paul could probably back me on that one.
About that.
I'm an athlete on the Irish Paralympic team as a high jumper. Some of my most notable achievements today include me becoming a WPA European bronze medalist back in 2018, sorry. Two-time WPA Italian Grand Prix gold medalist, current WPA French Grand Prix winner, as well as finishing second in the National Under-23 Championships and able-bodied competition last summer.
Fantastic. So it's a long list of achievements for a short career so far. So I suppose maybe the first thing to touch on for people in terms of being a Paralympic athlete is maybe just describing around your disability and what that exactly is.
Yeah, so I suppose for everybody who's going to be watching this video, everybody will be able to see that I'm missing my left hand. Usually when people put the question to me as to what exactly it is that happened to my hand, I always come up with a funny joke or story saying that a shark ate it off, or I was in a fight with a bear. Something funny and comical that way. But what actually happened was when I was developing, the umbilical cord wrapped around my elbow restricted the blood flow, which therefore resulted in the stoppage of growth. The scientific term for that is called amniotic band syndrome. But to sum things up short, basically I was born this way.
Okay, well, it obviously hasn't stopped you, as we heard from your career achievements. So I suppose the first thing is, how are you doing over lockdown? I know, as an elite athlete, this obviously must have put a lot of barriers and challenges in the way of training and things like that. So how are you adapting to lockdown and COVID?
Definitely. This has obviously been an extremely difficult time for athletes and people across the country and across the world. Being able to adapt their training and lifestyles has been quite a task. I'm quite fortunate in the sense where I actually compete in individual sport as opposed to team sport, so I have a bit more freedom in that sense. I'm very lucky to have access to my own gym equipment here at home, adapting my training sessions as we go ahead over the next few months. And I've also got access to the new finalised track at Killarney Valley AC Athletics Club. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm doing quite well down here now. I have to say I'm very, very fortunate and lucky to have access to all of those various different things.
Fantastic, and I was looking through your Instagram recently, and I seen you doing deadlifts with crazy weights and bench presses and different things like that there. So how do you adapt that kind of training for yourself to be able to perform them exercises?
I suppose really it's like anything. It's a trial and error experiment. There's not a handbook out there for people to read off of as to how a one-handed person can deadlift, So everybody has their own unique way of doing things. Myself and my coach, Tomas Griffin, came up with quite a unique way of using a Carr safety belt and strapping it around the right-hand side of my shoulder as it would come on to the hex bar on the opposite side. So I'd be able to grip onto it, obviously, with my right hand, and then have stability and grip with the safety belt on the other side of the hex bar.
Yeah.
So we've been able to experiment with that sort of training as well. We're still only in general preparation phase as we speak. Still a massively long season ahead, especially considering that Tokyo, please God, is going to be next year.
Yeah.
We need to save the juice and not get ahead of ourselves and trust the process in terms of the training time going forward over the next few months.
Fantastic. So I suppose maybe we'll go back to the very start in terms of you starting sports and at a primary school age. Probably, was there any kind of particular sports at the start that you really enjoyed, and was there any was there any coaches or teachers that either underestimated you and left you out, and how you felt about that, or was there any specific, ways that coaches and teachers involved you in things that maybe you yourself thought you mightn't be able to do?
Well, the first sport that I showed any real interest or desire in was basketball, and one of the massive main reasons because of that was my father was a basketball player for the local National League team in Killarney, Killarney Lakers. So I was always around that basketball environment. I would be going to all my father's basketball training sessions and games from a very young age. So I was constantly around that basketball environment, as I said. So it was only bound at some stage that I wanted to show a bit of interest in actually picking up a ball and learning how to play myself. I actually remember my first basketball training session like it was just yesterday. I said this numerous times in various different interviews that I've done before. I remember walking into the old creaky basketball court down in St. Brendan's College, Killarney, and opening the door to head into the basketball gym, where it was basically, it felt like a scene from a movie, where everybody just stopped what they were doing. The basketballs felt like they just suddenly stopped bouncing, and you could hear the whispers, and you could see people pointing at me, saying to their friends, how is this guy going to play basketball? He's only got one hand. He's obviously different to the rest of us playing basketball. But what I find funny is that how 9 short years later, I became the first one-handed basketball player to ever represent their country nationally in the world. As you can imagine, that didn't just happen overnight. That took obviously a lot of commitment, determination, and drive in order to go on and achieve my goal. And my goal was to ultimately play basketball for Ireland, and representing my country was always and has been a massive pride. It all started off really with joining the St. Paul's basketball team in Killarney when I was 5 years old. Then when I went into secondary school, making that leap into secondary school basketball with St. Brendan's College, Killarney, then being noticed from playing well, I suppose, in my basketball games by the Southwest Regional team, where I received trials. After the trials, then being selected for the Irish basketball team, which of course was a dream come true for myself. From the early ages of 5 and 6 years old, I would be getting up with my father before school at 6, 7 o'clock, going swimming and going shooting some hoops before school. I was just that driven and determined to go after and achieve my goals. And that was from a very early age. So anybody who knows me knows how driven and determined I am as a person, aside from sport, in life in general. If I want to do something and if I have a task set out, I'm going to do whatever it is in my own capability to make sure that I achieve that task. So that will always be an achievement that I look back on with great pride.
Yeah, and I suppose you made the point there that when you walked in, all the kids kind of stopped, and it was like something out of a movie scene. And I suppose, as coaches and in clubs, it's not something that maybe we're used to happening. Someone with a disability coming into the mainstream club. How did the coaches approach you, make you feel welcome, and maybe in certain drills that you were struggling in and things like that, how did they keep you engaged and keep you motivated to go?
I suppose really I've always been extremely grateful to have had a great supporting network throughout my life. I have to say that every single person who's coached me in my basketball career has always been extremely supportive, and they've always believed in my ability to play basketball at a high level. I think really why coaches can be a bit nervous and a bit skeptical about allowing a person with a disability to join their club or allow them to participate in certain sessions. I think it's just a fear factor, a fear of the unknown, that is something new to them, as opposed to being something that's actually going to hamper them and their session. Everything that I've done in basketball hasn't been too dissimilar to the average able-body person. I've just learned how to adapt it in my own way, and obviously with the help of some coaches then as well along the way. So I think it's just a fear factor really that's involved in it, something new to the coach that they haven't experienced before. Yeah. But everybody learns and adapts in their own way. For example, if you're playing basketball, you have a different way of shooting to the guy next to you. Everybody has their own shooting form. Everybody has their own shooting technique, the way that they dribble the ball, the way that they defend. Everybody learns and adapts in different ways. So I think it's just being accepting of people who are different and people of all abilities.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose maybe before we go further into the basketball, it's we need to note all the other kind of sports that you're on. And I know I've seen an interview where you noted that you won an able-bodied tennis competition and things like this as well. So you've been competing in other sports as well as that, and now obviously the high jump. Was there any sport or any moment that you found that you didn't have that support network, that you found people were unwilling or unable to provide you with that, and how maybe that made you feel in that senses, or has it always been a positive result?
To be honest with you, it's something that I haven't really taken much notice of, should I say. I've always had the attitude that anybody can participate in whatever it is that they want to. I've always been competing in everybody's sport, as I said, from a very young age, playing tennis, basketball, soccer, participating in swimming classes, doing various different sports. Going back to tennis, I won a tennis competition, an able-bodied competition, when I was 12 years of age up in Dublin. So it's something that I've never let it hamper my will to go on and achieve great things, really, I suppose. Even if, let's say, hypothetically, I didn't have a great supporting network, I wasn't going to let that affect me in the slightest, because I would have been oblivious to that anyway, because my mentality is to go on, give it 100% and nothing less. And that's all you can really hope for and ask for, really, whenever you participate in something.
Yeah, fantastic. So I suppose then to jump into the basketball a little bit more, and as you said, your family is a basketball family, and your father had played with the National League side and stuff like that. And I read in one of your interviews, or I think it was a video or something, you asked your father to wear his Irish jersey, and he turned back to you and said that you need to earn one yourself. Was that the real kind of start of that dream, or was it something before that made you think I am going to make an Irish basketball team and nothing's going to stop me?
I wouldn't exactly pinpoint that exact moment in terms of me going on my quest for playing for Ireland. I mean, obviously it was a factor in some sense, but it was a goal of mine from a very young age to represent my country. It was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to play for Ireland. I wouldn't exactly pinpoint that moment, but it was various different moments, I suppose, combinating together, which ultimately led to me wanting to go on and play for my country, which I luckily did back in 2015.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, it was 2015. You were on the under 15 squad, and I was just having a look at just some of the names that were on that team, the likes of Chris Ursula, who's now playing with Temple Oak National League, Paul Kelly in Moycullen, who won the under-20 National Cup last year, Owen McCann, UCD, who was there, the Hannigans down in Neptune. Like, that was a really talented squad. How did you find, the competition and competing against these players?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. The team, as you just mentioned there, it wasn't a slouch of a team by any means. There's been a handful of guys from that squad, like the likes of James Beckham and a few other individuals who have actually gone over to the States to ball. So some really talented guys who put in the work in, and it's obviously worked out well for them. So I wish them all the best in the future, and they all seem to be getting on excellent. So fair play to all the guys. It was a fantastic team to be part of and a great experience.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe talk about the kind of first day going into the trials and stuff. You said, the first day going into your club training, it was like a movie scene, and everyone stopped and stared. Was it something similar? And how quickly did they realize that you belong to be there as much as any of them?
Definitely. Well, I suppose the real similarities from my first training session was actually in comparison to when I had my first game at the regional tournament up in Galway back in 2014, I think October of 2014, I think it was. when I got subbed into the game and I scored my first 3 threes, or I scored my first 3 3-pointers in a row. And that's when people really start to notice that this guy can ball, and this guy is willing to put in the effort, and that he's no slouch on the offensive and defensive side of the floor. So that was when people first really started to take notice, I suppose, and respect me and not stand off me. So that was the first kind of key moment where people were like, well, we need to respect this guy.
Okay. And I suppose then going back to your family and things like that, you mentioned earlier when we talked that your father was a big fan of Michael Jordan, and that it maybe had some sort of influence in your naming as well when you were born. Have you watched The Last Dance? And what kind of, as an elite athlete, what did you bring from that documentary into your own career now?
I've learned that Michael Jordan is a ruthless man. No, it was an absolutely fantastic documentary, showcasing the GOAT of basketball. There's quite a few similarities in terms of his mentality and my mentality, in the sense where that whenever he achieves something, he's still not satisfied with what he's achieved. And that is an attribute, luckily, that I have as well, in terms of when I achieve something, I always feel like I could have done a bit better. For example, when I won that European bronze medal back in 2018, when I finished third, I was only competing in the sport for 8 months at that stage. And I still felt like I underperformed in the day and that I should have done a lot better. And to be honest with you, people would think that's quite a harsh outlook to have in terms of competing in an elite sport. But if you want to be the best, and if you want to continue to get better and progress every day, then that's the attitude you need to have. That's the attitude that the best have, and that the all-time greats have, and that's the attitude that I'm going to continue to have throughout my sporting career, and hopefully achieve some great things in the future.
Yeah, and I suppose it was a question I was really looking forward to asking you, because I watched a couple of interviews of you after specific tournaments and things like that, and it was something that I noticed straight away, is that you never seem to be happy with yourself. You always want that little extra percent. So I definitely seen that mentality in you, and it's something that, do you feel it is working for you going as you progress through the sport?
Definitely. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, like, it's not that I'm not happy with what I've achieved. I recognize my achievements and I acknowledge how great that they are. But it's the moment that you become satisfied is when you should just stop what you're doing.
Yeah.
You need to have that attitude that you're never satisfied with what you've achieved in order to keep on going on to achieve great things. And that's always going to be my attitude and outlook throughout my career, as I said, going back to. And I believe that's the attitude that the majority of the athletes in the country need to have as well, to continue to keep on better, or to continue to keep on getting better and progressing as well.
Yeah, and before we move on to your high jumping career and we leave the basketball behind, obviously the basketball has become huge in Kerry, which has always been famous as a football county and stuff. And you've obviously had the Tralee Warriors in the Super League and St. Paul's in the National League this year. If we do get back up and running, we're going to have 2 teams in Killarney. What do you think that's going to do for the town in terms of basketball, and just what's that rivalry going to be like going into the National League? It's something we're all very excited for in Basketball Ireland anyway.
Definitely. I think it's absolutely fantastic for the town of Killarney, and it's great for Kerry basketball to have that local rivalry in one specific town. It's great to have that friendly rivalry there from Cougars and Pauls. It's only going to push each team on to continue to keep on getting better and to try and get the upper hand off the other team. It's a shame, obviously, the season has been called to a halt for the next few months, but that's just the case that every team, not just St. Paul's, are in at this current moment in time in the country. So we just have to be patient and sit tight.
Yeah, and I need to mention obviously as well St Mary's and Clorgan. It's just basketball is going from strength to strength down there, which is great to see. So I suppose moving, this is the next question: is how did you move from basketball, which was your main sport and your main goal, and making that Irish team? How did you transition from that now into becoming a high jumper? What was that transition like? Where did it start? And if you just give us a bit of background about that.
Definitely. It's quite a unique way as to how I got involved in the sport of high jump. For fifth and sixth year of secondary school, I decided to do a course called Leaving Cert Applied, which is a separate course from the typical Leaving Cert. And part of that course requires you to find various different work experiences throughout the 2 years. So I decided for my first year of work experience that I wanted to do it in the Carr Centre in Tralee. They are a disability organisation that help people with disabilities through physical activity and sport. Carr already knew who I was through my basketball background and asked if they could make a video about my basketball career, highlighting the importance of what sport meant to me at the National Seminar for Inclusion that was going to be on in December of 2016. And one of the guest speakers at the event was Jason Smith, who's also known as the fastest Paralympian of all time. I had a great conversation with Jason Smith the night before the seminar commenced, and he actually had an idea as to who I was and asked if I wanted to go up to the Paralympic Expo, which is basically an open day for people to try out various different sports to see if you had any interest or any desire in competing in. And that expo was going to be on in January of 2017. And in my own words, I said, sure, look, I'll go for the crack and I'll see what it's like. And I went up the following month to find out that a few different sports actually saw some serious potential in my athletic ability and wanted me to take part in their discipline at a serious level, which was something I wasn't expecting. I then had the decision to make. And the decision was, first of all, did I even want to take on any of these sports at a serious level? And second of all, if so, what sport was I going to choose? So with some great thought and consideration with myself and some family members, I decided that the high jump would be the sport that I wanted to take on seriously and give it 100% commitment, because it was the sport I would enjoy the most and also the sport I would have been probably best at. Considering with my basketball background, I always had a relatively decent high jump, you could say. My sort of play style in basketball, like my position was a small forward. My play style really was I was able to defend the best guy on the other team, and I was also able to play inside from time to time, where I'd get a lot of rebounds and blocks. So I always had decent athletic ability in that sense. So high jump was the sport that I chose, that I wanted to go down. But I didn't really have a full-time coach for the first few months of my high jumping career. I had my first international competition in June of 2017 over in the WPA German Grand Prix, where I finished fourth out of four people. As you can imagine, I wasn't exactly happy with that. But that was down obviously to the lack of coaching and the lack of knowledge I had in the sport, especially considering that athletics and high jump in particular is so technical. You need to have the knowledge in order to actually progress and develop in the sport at all. It wasn't until November of 2017 where I was actually on the track one day back in Castle Island in County Kerry one Sunday morning, where I was jumping at the track, and one of the local athletes was at the track, and his name was Tomas Griffin, and he could visibly see that I was getting frustrated as I kept on knocking the bar, and I was getting frustrated with myself not knowing what I was doing wrong, and that was just down to having no knowledge in the sport. Tomas kindly offered to give me a hand for the remainder of the session, and in that session alone, I felt that I learned an awful lot from him. And he kindly offered and said to me, look, I'm going to be here at the track same time next week, and I'll be willing to give you a hand again. And the weeks just kept on rolling and rolling on. And it came to the stage where he was like, look, Jordan, I see some serious potential in your ability to become a good high jumper. And I will be willing to be your full-time coach. But there's commitment. And the commitment is that you have to give 100% or nothing. And it was from that moment on really that I knew that I had a good coach and a good guy looking after me, wanting the best for me. And that was the moment when I really started to progress. So when I say to people, when I properly started the sport of high jump, it was back in January of 2018 where I did proper structured training and when I was actually getting full-time coaching on a regular basis. There was lots of changes that had to be made, as you can imagine. I was actually doing a bit of weightlifting at the time after my basketball career and before my high jumping career. So I was quite heavy at that stage. To go into a couple of figures and statistics, in January of 2018, I was 83 kilos body weight. On the lead up to the Europeans, which were on in August, I lost a total of 11 kilos in the space of 8 months. I increased my overall speed by 35%. And I increased my overall PB from 1.37 to 1.84 in the space of 4 months from January until April is when I jumped 1.84 back in 2018. So myself and my coach Tomas made some great progress. Another interesting fact for you actually, and this is something that really gets people and really shocks people too, is that in those 8 months I jumped 3 times the height of Carr, which is obviously the tallest mountain in the country.
Yeah.
Lots of jumping was done, and lots of hard graft training was done as well. Wow. So at the Europeans, I was very fortunate. Like the goal from the start of the year was to get selected for the European Championships, and whatever happened after that happens. But we got ourselves in such good shape in those 8 months that we were in contention for a medal.
Yeah.
And the goal going into the competition was to win a medal, which luckily and thankfully I did. Won the European bronze. I felt like I underperformed on the day as my PB at that time was 1.84 and I jumped 1.75 in the competition. So I did underperform, but you have to look at the positives, and the positives were that I was just after turning 18 years old, my first major championships, competing against guys who have been at the sport for various long years, and to still come in with a bronze medal is absolutely fantastic. So that was my first real season competing in the sport of high jump.
Yeah. And I suppose you said there, your PB at the time was 1.84, I think you said, but you've obviously increased that quite a bit now, and it's up, I think, 1.995. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it was
just to put that in context, like how tall of a person are you jumping backwards over?
Well, a good comparison as opposed to just stating a number. Yeah. If you're driving your car, and if you're about to park your car in a car park, and you're driving your car under a car park barrier that is set to 1.95 meters, that is essentially what I'm jumping over backwards off one leg.
That's unbelievable. I suppose then, just on some of the other points you made there, you said about Jason Smith and meeting him, and that's how the conversation with him started going through that. Would Jason be a role model, or maybe a hero of yours, and how kind of important is it that that people like Jason get the coverage to inspire the next generation? And obviously now you will be that next person to inspire the next generation.
Yeah, Jason is definitely a hero of mine. He's definitely a guy and an athlete who hasn't gotten the recognition he deserves, unfortunately. He has literally never lost a race in Paralympic competition, never. And I don't think it's something that's talked about enough. He's definitely somebody that I look up to, and somebody that I aspire to try and be like every day. His professionalism on and off the track is second to none. And he's ultimately the person who got me involved in Paralympic sport too. So it's something that I owe massively to him. He's also been a person who's instilled that sort of professionalism in myself, and he's somebody who ultimately every athlete wants to be at his level at some stage throughout their career. Yeah, he's just a fantastic guy, really fantastic guy.
And I suppose one of the things about Jason as well is that he's not only one of the fastest Paralympic athletes, he's one of the fastest athletes overall in Ireland. He is very quick, and I suppose that's something that you've said as well, that not only are you European bronze medalist, not only were you ranked second in the world at one point, you're also top 10 high jumpers overall in Ireland. And I read one of your quotes. You said you can still compete in able-bodied competitions. We deserve to be treated the same as everyone else and compete against them. And that's always been my outlook. So competing outside the Paralympics is obviously something that's important to you.
Definitely. Going back to Jason Smith, just a quick point that I'd like to get across to people is that he's the second fastest man in Irish history, full stop, disabled or able-bodied. His personal best in the 100 meters was 10.22. I don't think people understand how fast and how quick that actually is. I think the sport of athletics is seriously underappreciated in that sense. For example, when I'm doing my high jump in athletics in general is such a technical sport where if you're off on your approach by even half a stride, doesn't matter how fast, how agile, or how strong you may be, you're not jumping over that bar. You need to know exactly how many steps away from the bar, how many steps out from the bar you're going to be, and your stride length going in towards the bar, as well as being able to control your pace and feeling the lean of the curve and making sure that your foot placement is exactly bang on and that it's facing the opposite corner of the mat. There's so much involved in being able to jump over a really high bar. And that's the case for all sports in athletics. But in terms of my passion for competing in every body competition, that's always been my outlook in my entire life. It was in my second season in the sport really is when I started to really progress in terms of competing in every body competition and actually winning medals. My first competition in January of 2019, I was competing in the national under-19 junior championships where I finished third, jumping a new personal best of 1.90 m at that time, which was quite a shock to the majority of people at the competition. And it was my real sort of statement, I suppose, to the other athletes and other high jumpers that I wasn't someone just competing and filling up the numbers, that I was someone that wanted to compete at a really high level and ultimately win medals, which was what I did that year. One of my most notable achievements, actually, which is something I didn't mention, was actually finished fourth in the National Senior Championships back in July of 2019, and I just turned 19 at that stage, competing against guys who were a lot older than me and a lot more experienced than I was, and finished fourth at the National Senior Championships, which is where I jumped my PB of 195. Was an achievement that I always look back on with great pride as well.
Yeah, and I suppose you've listed countless achievements there in terms of your European bronze and all those other achievements. But going into the games in Dubai, you were ranked second in the world, and I think you touched on having quite a bad injury in terms of that hampered your performance, and you ended up finishing, I think it was sixth, you said. So what was that like in terms of dealing with maybe the disappointment of not getting to where you wanted to be, and getting back fit after that injury then and refocusing?
Yeah, so something that all athletes have to go through is that when the more they achieve, the more that is expected of them to perform at all competitions that they go and compete at. Going into the World Championships in November of 2019, this time last year, I was there was quite a lot of media publicity done on me prior to going to the World Championships, I was on billboards nationwide for Circle K. I'm a brand ambassador for Circle K. I was on the back of buses. The countless amount of articles done through social media about me in preparations for the World Championships and me hopefully contending for a medal was astronomical. So there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders going into the championships. And what didn't help that was the fact that I was carrying an injury for 2.5 weeks prior to me flying over to Dubai. And that was an injury in my heel where I suffered bone bruising. And it doesn't sound too bad, but if you can picture yourself running into the bar at 34 kilometers an hour, which is my fastest that I've been in, the fastest shape that I've been in, if you're running towards the bar, that speed, and you're planting your jumping foot, which was my jumping foot, which was the foot that suffered the bone bruising, you put 7 times your own body weight into the force of the ground when you jump. So that wasn't pretty at all whatsoever. And the week leading up to the competition, I was getting constant treatment every single day, getting dry needling into the side of my ankle, which isn't exactly pleasant considering there's hardly any muscle or fat around the edge of your heel. But look, these are just things that happen, and it's something that I've accepted over time. And looking back on it, there's actually quite a lot of positives to take. There's a lot of pressure on my shoulders, and to be fair, I still think that I delivered and performed well with everything that was going on at that time. A couple of days before the competition, I couldn't even jump over 175 due to my heel injury. And in competition, I managed to pull off a jump of 1.88 m. So when the pressure's on, I always feel like that's when I'm at my best. And to be able to jump over 188 with bone bruising in my heel is something that I'm actually quite impressed with in myself, to be able to push through that pain. And that's just something that all athletes go through in their career. They always have setbacks, but it's how you respond to those setbacks really define your true character and what you're made of.
Yeah, and I suppose you are at the start of hopefully a very long career. So what's the next goal, or what's the next focus?
Well, the next focus for me is obviously the Tokyo 2021 Paralympic Games that are going to be going ahead next year. That is ultimately every Olympic and Paralympic athlete's dream, is to go and compete at that Games. But we have to take it one step at a time. The European Championships are also on in June of 2021 next year. So that's the competition where I hope to go to and actually contend to win that, to be honest with you. In terms of my rankings, I was ranked 2nd this year in the WPA World Rankings. And I was also ranked number 6 in the National Able-Bodied Senior Rankings, which is something I'm also really happy with. So my goal for the Europeans would hopefully go on contend for the gold medal there, and then for Tokyo, ultimately try and go on to contend for a medal, which would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and well, I'll be keeping a close eye on you and hoping you're the best. I suppose maybe just to go on and to, you talked about doing your work experience in Carr, and Carr, for people who don't know about it, as you said, it is an organisation that work with people with disabilities and getting them involved in sport. And at Basketball Ireland, we've done a lot of work this last year with them in terms of signing their charter and implementing our own policies and things like that there. And obviously now trying to do these spotlight interviews of all the good stuff that's going on, whether it's in basketball or outside of basketball. So I suppose you yourself, you were involved. You're an I'm Into ambassador with Carr. You were involved with the Carr Charter, videos and things like that. So, what is it about the Charter, and what is it about Carr in general, and making that commitment with the Charter that's so important in your eyes for clubs to do in all sports?
Something that's vitally important for clubs across the country to definitely get involved in. The Charter was actually designed by people with disabilities for clubs and coaches around the country to have a better idea and to have more knowledge as to how they should be more accepting and to be more open towards people with disabilities joining their clubs and going in for coaching sessions, etc. So to find out more information on that, really, you can go onto the Carr Centre website at www.carrcentre.ie. But it's something that I would highly recommend to all clubs and to all coaches as well in the country to get involved in it and to have a look at that, because it makes a massive difference to people with disabilities to be included like that.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, definitely to check out the Carr website, but ourselves, we on the Basketball Ireland website under Get Involved, you'll find an inclusion section. So for people to check that out, there's a lot of information there with the charter as well. So I suppose maybe to kind of come to a conclusion and come to maybe the end, what kind of advice would you give not only to basketball clubs, but clubs up and down the country to deal with or to be more proactive in including people with disabilities in their sport?
I would say to be more open and to not be nervous, anxious, or afraid of somebody new who may appear to be different than the other people you are currently coaching. Because going back to, as I said earlier on in this Zoom call, it's the fear factor really that gets people, and it's something that they're going into the unknown, that a person with a disability may be joining their club and they're unsure as to what to do. But people find their own ways of adapting and learning, and it's just to be open to that and to just be accepting of people with all abilities. And it's just trying to publicize that really and get that point across to people that we all deserve to be treated equally. Doesn't matter if you got one arm, two arms, three arms, everybody's the same. Everybody deserves to be treated with the same amount of respect as the guy right beside you. And I'll always be a firm believer of that and a massive advocate for that as well. And that is a huge reason as to why I'm an ambassador for the Carr Centre. They're just a fantastic organisation, an organisation that means an awful lot to me, really.
Yeah. And my final question for you is, we touched there on what clubs should do and advice you would give them. For a child who's maybe watching this at 5 or 6 years of age, with a disability, what advice do you give them in terms of getting involved in sport and what they should do?
There's a quote that I always usually say, and that is to never let other people's negativity hamper your will to achieve great things. Because there will be times in life where ultimately people try and bring you down and tell you that you're not good enough. But you need to 100% believe in your abilities, that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. For me personally, growing up, I didn't have any other one-handed person you could say to look up to. It was just me. Obviously, very grateful to have a great supporting network. But I was just going through the motions and living life as it came to me. And now I'm a government-funded professional athlete with a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And becoming a professional athlete has always been a massive dream of mine, and to be that now is absolutely fantastic. So the advice that I give to young people is definitely to go after your dreams, and the only person that can ultimately stop you is you. Nobody else can stop you. So never let other people's negativity hamper your will to achieve great things.
I think that's a perfect way to end this. So just from myself and from Basketball Ireland, thank you very much, Jordan, for taking part, and I hope you all the best with the rest of your career. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Cheers.